John Mutunga, you have something to add?
No.
Okay, all right. I want us to transition because lately we've had the president talking about different things that he believes the previous administration was wrong about, and he spoke while unveiling the expansion of access to government services on online platforms to 5,000 of them, and he said that huduma namba was a total fraud, that the country spent 15 billion shillings without getting any value out of it. And now he's proposing a new mode of identification, that is the digital ID, that is going to correct what huduma namba did not correct. Honorable Kagushia, I mean, what is this about? Is it an obsession to call the previous administration names? Because he took part in the huduma namba. He was part of those people that were early to register, and he even spoke about it, saying that it was going to be the single source of truth. What has changed in those 4 short years?
The 15 billion that was spent in quest for acquisition of the huduma number is what was really out of this world. And anyone would have been shocked and surprised to hear of those figures. It doesn't matter whether you took that huduma number or not. I mean, he did because he believed in digitization. And if you look at the way President is taking the whole issue of digitization, you realize that it's not something that he's just thinking about, but it's something that is really within him. And so he appreciated the issue of government digitization then, he does now. Just like he has taken up the issue of environment and conservation and tree planting. So really, that issue of that appreciation is not in question. The problem would be how much, at what cost? And really that's what the president is querying. Why did we have to spend 15 billion Kenya shillings for something that really doesn't seem to have added value? I have always carried my huduma card number and have been waiting for a day that I am going to be told how it was ever supposed to be used. Or how it would be benefiting me as a person, especially in accessing government services. You know, we listened to Mushero those days, and he was always over everything about how the huduma number was going to help and sort us. But he left before showing us how it was sorting us out, except having left with a whooping 15 billion Kenya shillings that we paid. That's painful.
And the money, or...
Pardon?
You're saying he left with the money? He
left with a whole of a whooping 15 billion Kenya shillings that now the Ruto administration has to pay painfully. And of course, you see this part of the money that was being borrowed. And this is where...
What do you mean the Ruto administration has to pay? It was never clear at that time.
I mean, it was borrowed money. We borrowed 15 billion Kenya shillings to make a huduma number that never worked or that never was. Are you getting? So now, painfully, as the Ruto administration is paying for the 21 to 25 billion Kenya shillings on the fuel subsidy, it is also going to be paying for another whooping 15
borrowed from
billion.
Who?
I mean, we borrowed from our donors, I mean, our lenders, mainly from China, you'd imagine. I mean, a lot of the money that...
You're saying Kenya borrowed 15 billion shillings to come up with huduma number?
It did. What happened, what has been happening is that we had very expensive ventures by the Jubilee administration or by the handshake administration. And these paradventures that we had at that time were being financed through loans. So you would have BBI, for example, that again would go...
Let's talk about huduma number. You don't lose me. Because you said that we borrowed to pay it.
Yes.
And you don't have a specific person that brought that money here.
I mean, I would get you those records, and probably when I'm coming here next, I will give you better information and facts on that. But the issue is, for all the engagements that we had and that we were paying for in that administration, the handshake administration, we were borrowing heavily. And now you see, and you know the question here was, why does President Ruto have to refer to the issue of the handshake administration? And the reason is, he is painfully paying for some of the mistakes that were made then. For example, he's paying a whopping 15 billion Kenya shillings now in terms of repaying loans for money that really never was spent on anything that helped Kenyans. Now, look at how many services were digitized. it was very few services. Now look at what the Ruto administration is doing, boosting all the way from, I think, about 200 and something services all the way to 5,000 services. And sooner than later, it's going to be up to 7,000 services. And you see, that is also going to be helping Kenyans a lot. Okay. And it's going to be helping the government a lot in terms of collections as well.
Right.
If you put people on e-citizen, it's going to reduce the...
You raise a lot of issues. I'm just wondering, do you know what those 5,000 services are?
I mean, you will be getting a listing of all of them, but largely they are in the issue of civil registration, they are in agriculture, they are also in health, they are also in various categories. I mean, you're going to be getting a listing of all these services.
The reason I'm asking that is that e-citizen has been on for several years now.
Yeah.
In fact, if you had to register a birth, death, if you had to register a new car, I mean, you go through that process, but then we'll wait for the list of 5,000. No, let me hear from Honorable.
But I wanted to point out on something of the...
I'll give you another opportunity. Okay. Let me just hear from Honorable John Mutunga here. I'm just wondering, because if huduma number, which was really sold in this country, I remember it was supposed to be, the deadline was supposed to be April 2019, and they were saying that if you do not register, then you're not going to be accessing government services. Now, the new administration is coming with a new plan, digital IDs. I mean, what are all these? Because Kenyans just care about accessing services. It doesn't matter whatever name you give it.
Huduma numbers and what is happening right now. It took too long for us to get results from this exercise of huduma number. And I do not think we are going to get any results anyway. Having said that, let's look at the need for getting known. I think the number we have right now is personal identification number. The PIN is a KRA user mechanism. Now, you cannot plan effectively with floating data. You need to have very specific data and characterize that data in terms of the segments of the different types of people so that you can intervene objectively.
But the government is the one that issues ID cards.
What? ID card does not have sufficient information other than saying where you come from and maybe probably your date of birth. It doesn't give the rest of the democratic data that we probably need to collect and store.
Like what?
So we need to know, if you look at the socioeconomic classes in this country, you need to know how many are in which contract. We normally talk about people at the bottom of the pyramid, but we don't know who is actually in that bottom of the pyramid. Where do we define the line to the bottom of the pyramid and so on? We need to be very, very clear for planning.
So how will a digital card give you that?
A digital card will basically, the moment it is put into a user material or an interpreter, you will get all the type of data that you have. Where do you give an ID and then everything about you is displayed? In which situation in Kenya? Kenya is part of the global world. The global world is digitized. There's absolutely nothing wrong with coming up with a way of identifying individuals, because we plan for individuals. We are developing people, not anything else. I don't need to give examples of what else could be developed. But we are developing individuals. We need to know precisely who actually in this particular is in this particular
okay.
category.
We register Dr. John Mutunga and we take the biometrics,
yes,
the face and everything.
Everything, yes.
So what else do we capture in that system to show that he belongs in this cadre of society? Based on the
parameters of John Mutunga, and then the fact that you can design these classes, of course they can be designed, it is possible to know who is where. Like now, people basically speak about 20% of Kenyans owning 80% of the wealth. Who are these 20% and where do we draw the line?
But isn't that the work of survey? If you conduct a survey and you come up with that, isn't that what it's supposed to do? Well,
you cannot do an exhaustive survey unless you do what is called a census, and census which is very detailed, because a survey will give you the figures. When information about everyone is captured, it will even be easier for the law enforcement system to work better. It will be easier for us to know when people are actually growing, because like us civil servants or public servants are supposed to declare wealth. We declare what we think we have. you say, okay, for instance, I have so many, and then you quantify and declare that. But how many other people who have wealth out there who have no mechanism of declaring this wealth? Who owns what in this country? Who is doing what in this country? That information I don't think is captured in the periodic
so once you capture
housing and population
how do you use
census.
How do you use it once you
for planning? For planning this country, for responding effectively to the different categories of people, for knowing exactly how many, if we talk about hustlers, how many hustlers are we talking? We talk about estimate figures, and estimate figures are floating. You need specific data that is credible. I'm saying that if you have to offer extension services, for instance, in this country, you need to know who are the farmers who are, for instance, livestock farmers, who are farmers who are doing crops, what crops, and so on. That data is not available anywhere. Yet we keep on talking about...
Look, yes, data fine, but at the counties, because, for instance, agriculture is a devolved function, livestock is, falls under that. Are you telling me that the county officers are dealing with farmers they do not know, yet they're in the field?
I want to be on record that they actually do not have accurate information on the number of farmers they have. I've been in agriculture for the last 27 years. I can tell you this for a fact. When we plan with estimates. We've not really been able to, every day that we put money in the budget to register farmers. And when we have an intervention, for instance, let's say the insurance scheme, which was being given through the check of through support to in terms of the cost reduction for input supply. We want to know exactly who is growing what crops, what's the size of the acreage that they are growing, and then what kind of inputs do they need? How can we plan now for an increased supply of this input so that you can have a multiplier effect in terms of productivity? That information cannot be gotten from any office.
Okay.
We need that information captured properly so that if we are intervening in a specific subsector of the economy, we're able to say, this is what we need. And that is how we can grow an economy. We cannot grow an economy from fictitious figures and saying, okay, 20% of Kenyans are in this or the other. Now, this information, digitization, is going to help us in many ways. We will lay out the infrastructure. And I think there is a serious effort by the government already to lay out this infrastructure. The government has invested in 100 computers per ward. Every ward in Kenya is going to get 100 computers. These 100 computers are going to be set up in computer hubs, the IT hubs. And we are going to have more training and a lot more of the use of this information where they will be linked with a system that can help them, access even jobs from outside this country. People are earning from their houses, through the IT.
Okay, that's a totally different agenda, I believe, because, digital IDs versus the 100 computers per ward, related but not exactly the same. Honorable Basil, what are we dealing with here? Because remember, once upon a time, there was an old ID, then there was new generation ID, then there was huduma number, then now there will be digital IDs, and of course the president has said that the huduma number was a fraud. What are we dealing with here? And because like he says, the idea is to identify who the government is dealing with. But how far do we go?
Well, I think first we need to appreciate that our country has gone through a number of revolution, and so much money has been wasted. If you look at the huduma number and what is being proposed, is the same thing. And this is wastage of government resources or public resources. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel, but we can use what we have. Why can't we not use our IDs as a unique identifier? If you look at our driving license, it has a microchip that can also give you access to data, the data you are looking for. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel and come up with what you call fancy words like unique digital identifier, which to me I think is just another scam in waiting. Someone maybe has just got a deal somewhere and wants to make money, The way we know with the huduma number, the contract was actually given or awarded to Estonian company, So maybe someone who is in the new government has got another deal elsewhere with another firm to be able to reintroduce something which will not take us anywhere. What I would say, if we talk of the e-citizen, what they should be doing now is actually to expand the e-citizen and bring some we call like a dashboard where you can see the delivery of services for the nation, where you can be able to have a scorecard to know where there are gaps in service delivery and where to inject resources to be able to advance the development agenda. That can be done in e-citizens, but bringing other issues like a unique digital identifier, to me, is just crap. Doesn't take us anywhere. It is actually misuse of public resources. Now we are struggling as a nation. That is the key reason why they justified to increase or to reintroduce new taxation. So why do we need to spend billions of shillings or millions of dollars in something that will not add us any value? There will be no value of money to this. So for me, I don't think it makes any sense. We don't need to reinvent the wheel because already the data we are looking for is there. What was collected in huduma, through huduma number, that data is stored somewhere. Again, we also need to respect the Article 31 of the Constitution, which talks about data protection. So as much as we want to reintroduce these fancy words, there could be hackers and cyber attacks, which could actually expose very sensitive data of people. So it's important to look at where we are and also try to come up with the new innovations or new ideas that resonate with the reality, but not just to come up with new suggestions or new products that will end up just consuming taxpayers' money, but give us nothing, basically.
I'm looking at this article that you referenced, 31 of the Constitution, that every person has the right to privacy, which includes the right not to have information relating to their family or private affairs unnecessarily required or revealed, and so much more. Honorable Anthony Oloch, do you have your huduma number card?
I know I registered for huduma. I never actually collected the card.
But you're called to collect?
Yes, I was called to collect. But I think maybe it's important. I was trying to look up the bill. I don't know whether there was an act, and I think it was some provisions were stayed in court. I'm trying to
2019
locate what happened. But just looking at what were the main objectives, I think it's important for us to anchor this argument on what was the main objective. And I'm looking at clause 6 of what ought to have been a bill that went into the act, the creation of NIMs. And I think that's where we need to peg this argument and then see where did huduma go, that data, where is it? And then where is this unique digital unique identifier coming from, isn't it? So that we don't seem to be, every administration that comes wants to create some new thing as if nothing really happened. Because it says that this was being established, they were establishing a national integrated identity management systems, yeah, which is to be called NIMS. And among the objectives here was to consolidate law on civil registration and identity management. And then B, establish a digital national population database to be a primary source of foundation for all our activities. Now, if you look at this, the objectives itself is noble. We have a civil registration system that does not speak, the registrar of births, which does not speak to the registrar of deaths. Then when you come to the issuance of identity card and at the point where you're going to vote, you remember there was this case that KPMG was supposed to have carried an audit, yeah, of how many people are born, who are dead, people who are issued with IDs, so that we have a system that constantly speaks to itself, yeah? I think that was the key noble idea, that so that at birth you're assigned that unique identity where if you give, I think in the US it's probably called a what? It is the Social Security.
Yeah.
Yes.
Number.
So that when that is logged in, at birth that is assigned to you, and all your KRA things, civil registration, identity card, all the things that go into our national insurance, these things are captured into a national integrated data system. Up to that point, the issue is very noble, and we ought not to mistake this in terms of 15 billion was lost by the last government. So let's start something else called a digital identifier and then spend billions of taxpayers' money. To what end? I think what we need to do is to carry out a very thorough audit of what has happened to our huduma, the data that was collected. Up to what point did we integrate this data into a national integrated data system? And then, do we now upgrade the e-citizen to be that US Social Security card number, or do we want to call this something else? I think we need to agree so that as a nation, we do not have what you call every government coming in, and there is nothing like administrative continuity. Each government wants to come up with a new thing. So I think that the ideas themselves are noble, but we are not starting from zero. Let us go back and find out how far did we go with the integration of this data, and can Kenyans then be told we are from today not going to use our national identity card. We have a national social security number or whatever that name is, and all our data will be collapsed into this.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right. I need us to take a short a look at the feedback that has come to us at Citizen TV and Sam Gituko. The hashtag to use is daybreak. And Okelo Molimo, you're saying that as much as I'm dissatisfied with how this regime has dismantled the economy, can you be satisfied? I'm somehow pleased with the president's remarks on proposed salary increment for lower cadre public officers. Some years back, teachers through unions signed non-monetary CBA, which must now be monetized. Hillary, you're saying that while you people are talking about SRC and increasing civil servant salaries, what about millions in private sector whose salaries have been the same for years? Who will speak for them? All right, San Nixon Dugire, to be honest, everyone needs a pay rise to cushion the high cost of living. The finance bill, for instance, has abruptly pushed us hard with no grace period to readjust pay slips. Jim Munene, I think the order stopping implementation of the Finance Act 2023 is wrong for being a blanket order. The order should have stopped implementation of fuel, that is 60% VAT alone. Now help won't be increased because of the order. Okay. Charlowood Rosie, the government should respect the court orders respective of how it wants to collect revenue. As far as Finance Act 2023 is concerned, judiciary is independent and ought to be treated as such. Defying its orders by the executive wing of government is not good. Now, I practically have no time unless it's 30 seconds for, the two of you. Yeah, so first, John.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you very much. I'm looking at IND. It's manual, limited in terms of the capture. I'm looking at huduma number. Did not go very far in terms of the integration of the data. Yeah.
What do you mean it's manual?
I mean, when you place, when you get the ID, how much information updates can you get?
It has machine readable zone that is scannable. Even IBC was scanning it.
So yeah, it's kind of all right, yes. But how do you update information in the ID?
You do not update in the ID. You update in the system.
That is what I'm saying. That system, whatever one does, is it updating automatically? That's where we want to go. Any small transaction you conduct anywhere, we will be captured into your data. So that's why this unique identifier is important. And therefore, it captures everything, including your ID and your background and everything else.
Okay.
Now, I want to agree with Honorable Luch that definitely the huduma number, never mind he never collected his. I did collect mine because I believed that indeed we were heading the right direction, never mind about the misuse of funds. But it's true, we need a card with a chip.
You didn't know about that time, about the funds misuse?
I mean, you see, the issue of the huduma number is something that really we needed to have in terms of having a card that has chip. And that we can do what Dr. Mutunga is saying. We can be able to update in the system. You can put it in the system and update information from government side that can help us to have systems communicating with each other so that when you are born, we know. When you are earning, we know. How much you are paying for tax, we also know. When you die, we also know. Even when
is it possible to do all that with the card?
It's possible. It's possible. It's possible. And when you also attain the age of senior citizen at 70 years, and now you qualify to also be given the government stipend for sustenance, then we also know we don't need to keep on registering people machinani every day. We will automatically just update them into the system and start getting the government stipend. So to that extent, I agree. And also the issue of not having to restart this whole process again. I also totally agree with that. We must not again go into another spending on this card. We must ensure that whatever data was collected, because a lot of data was collected, we use that and ensure that we don't again have another huge amount of money that is going to be spent on the new identifier card. And lastly, I also want to really implore upon our people who are processing, the immigration who are processing the passports, please ensure that the system is working. The CS Kindiki did state that the whole issue is going to be fixed. They must act on that instruction in that order so that we can have these passports processed as fast as possible. And I would want to say for record, nobody should see the issue of our young people looking for jobs globally negatively. For those people who have traveled a lot, they know that if you go to the USA, you have people from, you know, the Mexicans, and you have Philippines, and you have people from Asia who work there.
Okay.
If you go to, like, Dubai, you will find Philippines and people from, I mean, all the other, Nepal, and from all the other countries who are working there.
But I think...
And it's a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing, but I think, Honorable Kagusha, there's something we shouldn't miss, that most of them are not living because they want. It is because of circumstances and really, hold on, and there are people who don't have the capacity or ability to travel there. So what are they doing locally?
You see, those who have capacity and ability, let them travel. Let Kenyans work anywhere. I went to Doha in Qatar the other day. I transitioned there, and when I was going up the escalator, by the time I was getting up the escalator, I found Kenyans actually speaking in our native languages. When I went to security clearance, I found Kenyans actually almost conversing in Kiswahili. And all over there were Kenyans. Let Kenyans work anywhere in the world. In fact, it's a good thing that I mean, Kenyans are now starting to be accepted, because sometimes it has actually been
all right,
they're starting to be accepted across the globe to work.
We have to leave it at that. I think that's your unique identifier for the show. Thank you so much, Honorable John Kagusha from Mukurweini, Honorable Anthony Oloch from Mathare constituency, Bese Ngui from Yatta constituency, and Dr. John Mutunga from Tigania West for making time for us to have this conversation. And it continues. We have to continue talking about this, including online. We'll be looking at your feedback later on. Up next is Sporty Monday. My name is Sam Gituku. See you again tomorrow.